The church bells tolled, but James stood alone at the altar. His heart raced, waiting for Olivia, the woman he loved, the woman he thought would be his forever. But instead, Olivia's father stepped in with a look of pity. "She's gone," he said, his words like a dagger to James's soul. "She left you because you're poor. She needs someone who can offer her more." His world shattered in that moment. His love, his future, vanished in the blink of an eye. 3 years later, James found himself face to face with Olivia again. But this time, things had changed. He had nothing, and yet he owned everything. What happened in those years? And what was Olivia willing to lose to keep her secret buried? If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. James had spent his entire life in the shadows. Growing up in a small, run-down neighborhood, he had always been told that he would never amount to much. The world was set up for people like Olivia, the privileged elite who lived in luxury, who had the resources to make their dreams a reality. And then there was him, a simple man, an honest man, doing his best to make ends meet. But when he met Olivia at a business conference, everything changed. She was the perfect blend of beauty, power, and intelligence. And somehow, she saw something in him. It wasn't just his ambition that caught her eye. It was his heart, his sincerity. Olivia had been surrounded by people who only cared about what she could do for them, who sought to take from her without giving anything in return. But James was different. He saw her for who she truly was, a woman tired of being used, tired of the gold-digging men who tried to win her over with their expensive cars and tailored suits. They'd been inseparable for 2 years. Their love felt like a dream come true, one that James had never thought possible. Olivia made him believe that he could rise above his station, that he could be more than just a man scraping by. She encouraged him to take risks, to dream bigger than he ever had before. And so, when James proposed to her, standing in front of the city's skyline during their trip to Paris, he felt like the luckiest man alive. She said yes, without hesitation. For a moment, it felt like everything was perfect. When the days leading up to their wedding, James started to feel a coldness in Olivia that he couldn't explain. There were odd, fleeting moments when she seemed distant, like she was pulling away, but he brushed it off. After all, they were about to start their lives together. She had told him that she wanted him, all of him. They had talked about building a life based on love, not money. But as the wedding day approached, the cracks began to show. James had been saving for this moment, scraping together every penny he had. His modest job as a middle manager at a tech company had never been enough to buy Olivia the luxury she was accustomed to. Still, he believed they could make it work. Until the night before the wedding, when Olivia's father had called. James hadn't been prepared for the conversation that followed. "James, I know you love my daughter, but you need to understand something." The tone in her father's voice was flat, almost regretful. "Olivia is a smart woman. She knows what's at stake. She can't marry someone who has nothing." James's chest tightened. "Nothing? You can't offer her the future she deserves," Olivia's father had continued. "I'm sorry, but it's not enough. She deserves more. She needs someone who can give her the life she's worked so hard for." The words stung. But they weren't just words. They were a reflection of the life Olivia had come from. She had never had to worry about money, about survival. And in that moment, James realized just how big the gulf was between them. Olivia might love him, but not enough to sacrifice the future she thought she was entitled to. The next day, he stood alone at the altar. The guests who had come to celebrate were now looking at him with sympathy. And Olivia, she was gone. Have you ever felt like you weren't enough? Like you were being judged for something you couldn't control? How would you have handled it if someone you loved left you because of it? 3 years had passed since that fateful day. 3 years since Olivia had walked away without a second glance, leaving James in a world of pain and confusion. The months that followed had been the hardest of his life. For the first few weeks, he couldn't bring himself to do anything. He didn't go to work. He didn't eat. He barely slept. The only thing that kept him going was the hope, the foolish hope, that Olivia would come back, that she would realize she had made a mistake. But deep down, he knew it wasn't true. She had made her choice, and in doing so, she had destroyed him. But eventually, something inside James snapped. He couldn't stay broken forever. He had to move on. He had no choice. So, he started over. He found a new job, one that paid better than his previous one, and threw himself into it. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady. It didn't matter. He had to rebuild his life from the ground up, just like everyone else in his position. He kept his head down, focused on making money, working hard, and forgetting about the woman who had abandoned him. He pushed through the pain, buried it deep inside, and forged a new path. But it wasn't easy. The day he had the breakthrough that changed everything came as a surprise. James had been working late one evening, going over some contracts for a new venture he was considering. The company he worked for was small, but there was potential for growth. His hard work had finally paid off, and he was on the brink of something big, something that could give him the kind of life Olivia had always wanted, the kind of life he had never thought he could achieve. He was seated at his desk when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but James answered it anyway. "James," a voice said on the other end. It was Olivia's father. James's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't heard from him since the wedding day. "Is everything okay?" James asked cautiously. The man paused. "Olivia, she wants to speak to you. She needs to explain everything." The words hit James like a punch to the stomach. "Olivia? She wants to explain?" James felt a rush of conflicting emotions, confusion, anger, curiosity. He had no idea what this meant, but it didn't matter. He had to know. Without hesitation, he agreed to meet. The meeting was arranged for that same week in a sleek, upscale cafe in the city. The kind of place Olivia used to love. It was one of those places where the chairs were too comfortable and the drinks cost more than a week's worth of groceries. James arrived early, and his stomach twisted as he waited. Part of him wanted to turn and walk away, to never face her again. But the other part, the part that had never truly gotten over her, was pulling him forward. He needed answers. He had to know why she left him, and he had to know why now. After all this time, she was coming back into his life. The door opened, and Olivia walked in. She was still as beautiful as he remembered, maybe even more so. Her hair was longer now, tied up in a sleek bun. She wore a tailored suit that spoke of power and status. The Olivia standing before him now was not the same woman he had fallen in love with. She was hard and distant, like a completely different person. "James," she said, her voice steady but tinged with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "Thank you for meeting me." He didn't know what to say. His throat felt dry, his chest tight. The anger he had buried over the years rose to the surface, but he forced it down. He couldn't afford to lose control now. "What do you want, Olivia?" His voice was low, calm, but there was an edge to it. "You walked away from me, from everything we built, without a word. Why?" She looked away for a moment, struggling to find the right words. "I know I owe you an explanation," she began, "but it's more complicated than you think. I left because I had to. I couldn't choose you, not then. Not when I was trying to build something that could make a difference." Her words hit him like a slap. She left me because I wasn't good enough, because I didn't have the power or wealth to give her the life she thought she needed. "Do you think I've spent these years trying to move on without thinking about what happened?" Olivia continued, her eyes softening. "I made a mistake, James, but I had no choice. I thought I had to be the woman I am now to survive in this world." James didn't know whether to believe her. He wanted to. Part of him still loved her. But another part, his pride, his dignity, refused to accept the excuse. "What does that mean now, Olivia?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why are you here now?" She hesitated before answering. Because I've lost everything I thought I wanted. And now, I'm facing the consequences. You've changed, James. You've built something big, something I thought I could never have." James's mind reeled. What was she saying? If someone you loved left you for something beyond your control, would you ever give them a second chance? Or would you walk away for good? James sat there, stunned, his mind racing. Olivia had come back into his life, but it wasn't for the reasons he'd hoped. She wasn't here to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, or to reclaim the love they once shared. She was here because she needed something. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and laced with regret. I've lost everything, James. I spent 3 years building a life based on power, wealth, and status. But now, everything's falling apart. I thought I could control it all, but I can't. I'm trapped. James's pulse quickened. Trapped? Was this the same Olivia? The woman who had walked away from him for not having enough money, for not being enough to meet her needs? Now she was sitting across from him, vulnerable, pleading for something he didn't quite understand. You don't need me, Olivia, James said, his voice rough with emotion. You left me because I didn't have anything. You chose your world over mine. Don't come back now because it's falling apart. Olivia flinched at the harshness of his words, but she didn't look away. I didn't come back for you, James. I came back because I need you to help me. I need to fix this. Fix what? James asked, his voice low. Your life? Your career? Or are you trying to fix us? She hesitated before answering, her eyes darkened with guilt. I'm trying to fix everything. The company, my marriage, my decisions. I thought I could buy happiness. I thought I could buy love. But it's all a lie. And now it's unraveling. For a moment, James simply stared at her, trying to comprehend what she was saying. Her marriage? Was she really saying that the perfect life she had built with her husband, the life she had left him for, wasn't enough? I don't understand, Olivia, James said, his words sharp with confusion. You were with me. You said you loved me. And now you're married to him, to a man with more money, more power, more everything that I could never give you. So, what is it you really want from me now? Olivia's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his hand, but James pulled it back. He wasn't ready for this. He couldn't go back to being that man, the one who would forgive her with a simple touch, a kiss. Not again. I don't want you to feel sorry for me, she said, her voice tinged with desperation. I just need you to help me with something. A way out. James's heart thudded in his chest. A way out. What kind of way out did she need? He had been the one who had been left behind, the one who had to rebuild his life from the ground up, while Olivia had flourished in a world of wealth and privilege. And now, she was asking him to help her escape? What was she hiding? Help you, James repeated, disbelief in his voice. Help you how? Olivia paused, gathering her thoughts. I've learned something, James. Something about my husband. About the company I've built. It's all built on lies, on manipulation, and now it's all falling apart. My husband, he's been hiding things from me. Big things. Things I didn't know about. And now it's too late. The truth is coming out. James felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Her husband? Your husband? James asked, his voice now tinged with suspicion. What are you talking about? Olivia took a deep breath, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. My husband, Ethan, he's been involved in illegal deals I didn't know about. And now the people he owes are coming for him. And for me. I don't know who to trust anymore. James's mind raced. Ethan, the man Olivia had chosen over him. The man she had married after leaving him. The man she was now turning to for help. How does this involve me? James asked, his voice filled with skepticism. Why would you come to me now, after everything? What makes you think I'll help you? Because you've changed, James, Olivia said, her voice soft but insistent. You're not the same. Man I left behind. You're stronger now. You built something. And I need you to help me fix this. To help me get out of this mess before it's too late. James stared at her, his mind torn. The woman who had broken his heart was asking for his help. The same woman who had left him to chase wealth and power. And now, 3 years later, she was sitting in front of him, pleading for something he wasn't sure he could give. But as much as he wanted to turn her away, something inside him told him to listen, to at least hear her out. I don't know. Olivia, James said slowly. I've spent so long building my life, my future. I can't just throw that away because you've come to me with a problem. I'm not asking you to throw your life away, James, Olivia pleaded. I'm asking you to help me fix mine. I can't do this alone. As he looked into her eyes, he saw the woman who had once been the love of his life. But now, she was a stranger who had made choices that had broken them both. And yet, here she was, asking for his help. Would you be able to forgive someone who left you for a life of wealth and status? Or would you walk away for good? The weeks that followed were filled with tension. James's life, which he had carefully built, suddenly felt as though it were being pulled in all directions. Olivia's request for help wasn't one he could easily dismiss. As much as he wanted to tell her to walk away, to fix her mess on her own, something gnawed at him. Perhaps it was the familiarity of her face, the echo of the love they once shared, or maybe it was the growing realization that she needed him in a way she never had before. But it wasn't just that. James knew the stakes. This wasn't just about Olivia. This was about Ethan, the man who had taken her from him, the man who had built his empire on lies. This wasn't just a broken heart anymore. It was a tangled mess of power, deception, and a world he had been kept away from, one that was starting to feel much too real. After days of deliberation, James agreed to help. He couldn't say no, not when she was so vulnerable, so clearly unraveling. They arranged to meet regularly, going over the details of the shady business deals Ethan was involved in, tracing back his financial connections, and trying to uncover the secrets he had buried so deep. James's mind raced as they pored over the files Olivia provided. The more they dug, the more sinister it all seemed. Ethan wasn't just involved in illegal contracts. There were hints of money laundering, ties to organized crime, and murky political figures who had been backing his rise to power. Every connection they uncovered made James feel more like a pawn in a game he didn't even understand. But it was the phone call that changed everything. It came late one night while James was alone in his apartment, going through the final reports Olivia had sent. The phone rang, its shrill sound cutting through the silence. "James, it's Olivia," she said, her voice strained. "You need to listen to me. Carefully. I found something. Something I didn't expect. Ethan, he's been working with someone from your past. Someone you know. Someone you wouldn't believe could be involved in all of this." James's heart skipped a beat. "Someone from my past? Who?" he demanded, his voice low. It's Ryan," Olivia said, the name coming out as a whisper. "I found evidence that Ryan has been helping Ethan launder money. I know this is a shock, but James, Ryan is working for him. And it's bigger than anything you can imagine." Ryan. The name hit James like a thunderclap. Ryan, his best friend from high school. The guy who had helped him get through the toughest years of his life. The one who had always been there for him. And the man who had disappeared without a word years ago. James hadn't heard from him since their last fallout, back when he was struggling to make ends meet and Ryan had turned his back on him. The truth was, Ryan had walked away from their friendship when James needed him most. Ryan had gone on to build his own empire, and James had always suspected that there was more to his disappearance than he knew. He never asked questions, not after everything that had happened, not after Ryan had chosen his path over theirs. But now, the man who had abandoned him for the allure of money was connected to the very man who had taken Olivia away. And James couldn't ignore the burning question in his mind. Had Ryan been using him all along? "You're sure about this?" James asked, his voice shaking slightly. The revelation was so massive, so unexpected, that he couldn't quite wrap his head around it. "I'm sure," Olivia replied. "I've seen the records. Ryan and Ethan have been working together for years." "James, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you this. I didn't know how deep it went." The weight of the truth hit James with a force he wasn't prepared for. It wasn't just a betrayal of Olivia. It was a betrayal of himself. Ryan had been a part of his life for so long, and now he was tied to the man who had stolen his future, his happiness, and his love. "I need to confront him," James said, his voice hardening. "I need to know why. Why he did this. Why he's been involved in all of this. I'm not walking away from this. Not now." Olivia's voice cracked. "James, be careful. Ryan is not the same person you once knew. He's dangerous. He's involved in things you don't understand." But James wasn't listening. The betrayal stung too much. He had to find out the truth about Ryan, about Ethan, and about everything that had been hidden from him. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust? Someone you once considered family? How did you handle it? James couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on him. Every step he took in uncovering the truth about Olivia's husband, Ethan, and the revelation that Ryan was involved, only led him further down a path that he couldn't turn back from. What started as a mission to help Olivia had turned into a dangerous game, one where everyone he trusted seemed to have a hidden agenda. The drive to confront Ryan had become all-consuming. James needed answers. He couldn't allow Ryan, his childhood friend, the one person he thought he could always count on, to slip away again. Not after everything that had happened. Not after realizing that Ryan's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was tied to the larger web of lies that had already destroyed so much of his life. It had been 2 days since Olivia's confession. James had been putting off the confrontation, knowing that the moment he faced Ryan, there would be no going back. He had already lost so much, his love, his sense of trust, and now his friendship with Ryan. But he had no choice. Finally, after hours of wrestling with his thoughts, James drove to the address Olivia had given him. It was a high-end apartment building on the edge of the city, modern, sleek, and sterile. The place where Ryan had built his new life, leaving James behind in the dust. James parked his car on the lot and made his way into the lobby. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but he couldn't shake the sense that this meeting would change everything. The lobby was empty, too quiet, as if it had been waiting for him all along. He rode the elevator up to Ryan's penthouse, his hands clammy against the cool metal of the elevator walls. The door opened, and James stepped into the luxury apartment, one that felt as cold and empty as the life Ryan had built. There was no warmth, no sense of home, just expensive furniture, glass walls, and an overwhelming sense of detachment. Ryan was standing by the window, looking out over the city, his back turned to James. He hadn't heard him approach. "Ryan," James said, his voice cutting through the silence. Ryan didn't turn around immediately. It was as if he knew this moment was coming, but he wasn't ready to face it. Finally, after a long pause, he slowly turned around. His face had changed. The easy smile that used to greet James with a sense of camaraderie and brotherhood was now gone, replaced with something more hardened, more cynical. "James," Ryan said, his voice casual but guarded. "What are you doing here?" "I came for answers," James said, his words sharp, more demanding than he intended. "I know what you've been involved in. I know what you've done, Ryan." Ryan's eyes flickered for a moment, but he quickly masked the reaction. "What do you think I've done? You've been talking to Olivia, haven't you? She's been feeding you lies, James. You can't trust her." "Lies?" James's voice shook with disbelief. "You're working with Ethan. You're involved in everything. His criminal activities, the money laundering, the lies that have ruined my life. And now you're standing here, acting like you didn't destroy everything for me." Ryan took a slow, deliberate step toward James, his eyes narrowing. "You think I destroyed your life? You think I did that? Don't you see, James? I was trying to protect you. I was trying to make sure you didn't get involved in something you couldn't handle. You're still the same naive guy you used to be. I'm trying to survive in a world you don't understand." James's chest tightened. "You left me behind, Ryan. For money, for power. You turned your back on me when I needed you most. And now you're telling me you were protecting me?" Ryan's expression softened for just a moment, but quickly hardened again. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to betray you? This is the world we live in, James. I didn't have a choice. I thought I could build something better. But now it's all falling apart. And if you want to keep your hands clean, you need to walk away from this. You need to forget about Olivia, forget about Ethan, and forget about everything that's going on. It's bigger than us." James's mind raced. Bigger than us? Was Ryan really asking him to walk away, to let everything go? Could he really let this all slide, knowing how deep the betrayal went? "You're asking me to turn my back on everything," James said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You left me once, Ryan. You've already taken everything from me. And now you're asking me to walk away? I can't do that. Not this time." Ryan's expression turned cold, almost angry. "Then you're just like Olivia. You're choosing to fight instead of the peace. I don't have time for this, James. You've been warned." And then, in a shocking moment, Ryan's demeanor shifted. His calm, collected facade cracked, and for the first time, James saw a flash of fear in his eyes. Ryan was afraid. But before James could process what was happening, the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. He turned, only to see 2 men step into the apartment, their eyes cold and predatory. Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. "You should have stayed out of this, James. Now, you cross a line. and there's no going back. The atmosphere in the penthouse was charged with tension, thick enough to cut through the air. James's heart pounded in his chest as he turned to face the two men who had just entered. They were dressed in dark suits, their expressions unreadable. There was no doubt in James's mind that they weren't just random thugs. They were sent for him. Sent by Ryan. Ryan stepped back, his face hardening into an emotionless mask. "James, I warned you," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "You should have walked away. You should have let this go." James's mind raced. This is it. He was trapped in a room with men who didn't care about him, who didn't care about anything but their own agenda. Olivia had been right. Ryan wasn't the man he used to know. He had been corrupted by money, power, and the lies that came with it. The men took a step forward, blocking James's exit. The message was clear. He wasn't leaving. "What's going on, Ryan?" James demanded, his voice rising. "What's really happening? Are you really working with Ethan? Are you really going to let this happen? You're going to let him destroy everything, aren't you?" Ryan's gaze flickered briefly, but he quickly masked it with a cold, calculating stare. "You don't understand, James. This isn't just about Ethan. This is about survival, about making it in a world where the rules are different than the ones you grew up with. You were always too naive, too idealistic. This is how things work now." James could feel the weight of the betrayal in his bones. The man he had once trusted, the man who had been his closest friend, was now part of a system that was designed to crush anyone who didn't play by its rules. "And Olivia?" James asked, his voice raw with emotion. "You've been hiding behind her, too. Is she a part of this, too?" Ryan's jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. That silence was all James needed to hear. The truth had been staring him in the face for so long, but he had refused to acknowledge it. Olivia had been manipulated just like he had been, but she had never had the courage to break free. She had chosen Ethan, and now all the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. "You don't have to do this," James said, his voice quieter now, but still firm. "You don't have to protect Ethan. You don't have to protect this mess you've gotten yourself into. You can still walk away." Ryan's eyes darkened. He took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of his choices had finally caught up with him. "It's too late for that, James. Too late for both of us." The men behind Ryan stepped closer, their hands tightening into fists. James knew that if he didn't act quickly, he'd be trapped, his only option to fight his way out. He had nothing left to lose. He wasn't going to let Ryan, or anyone else, drag him further into this nightmare. Just as one of the men reached for him, James did the only thing he could think of. He lunged toward the door, crashing into one of the men and knocking him back. There was a moment of chaos, shouted orders, a fight for control. Ryan didn't move to stop them. He didn't move at all. James pushed his way past the men, scrambling toward the door. But just as his hand reached for the handle, he froze. A voice behind him, calm and chilling, cut through the chaos. "Going somewhere, James?" It was Ryan. His tone was colder than James had ever heard it. "I told you, there's no going back." James's heart raced as he turned to face him. "You can't keep me here, Ryan. You can't force me to stay. This isn't your life anymore." Ryan's eyes were filled with a mix of frustration and something else. Guilt, maybe? For a split second, there was a flicker of the man James had once known, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "You're right," Ryan said softly, "but that doesn't mean you're walking out of here alive." James's stomach twisted, realizing how much danger he was in. The reality of the situation set in. Olivia, Ethan, and Ryan, none of them cared about him. They had used him, manipulated him, and now they were willing to destroy him. And he had no way out. The men moved in again, faster this time. James knew they were trained, professional. But so was he. His mind raced, calculating his next move. He couldn't fight them all. He had to be smart. He darted to the side, hoping to find something to defend himself with. The room was eerily quiet now, save for the footsteps closing in behind him. But then, a familiar voice cut through the tension, freezing everyone in their tracks. Enough. It was Olivia. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She looked between James and Ryan, her expression a mixture of guilt and fear. "What is this, Ryan?" she demanded. her voice shaking. "What have you done? What are you doing to James?" Ryan turned to face her, his mask of control slipping for just a second. "Olivia, this is not your fight," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You should have stayed out of it." "No," Olivia stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "This is my fight, and I'm done being a pawn in this game. I don't care what happens to me anymore." "But, James," she looked at him, her eyes softening. "James, I'm so sorry. You were right. I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything." James stared at her, the mix of emotions too overwhelming to process. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that, after everything, she was truly on his side. But he couldn't ignore the truth. Everything had changed. Would you trust someone who had abandoned you once before? Could Olivia's apology be enough for James to let her back into his life? The room was thick with tension, the weight of years of betrayal hanging in the air. James stood frozen, torn between the woman he once loved and the man who had abandoned him. Olivia's apology echoed in his mind, but the rawness of the past, the pain of being left alone, of being told he wasn't enough, was too fresh. Could he really forgive her after everything that had happened? Could he truly trust her again? Olivia took a step closer, her eyes pleading. "James, please. I know I can't undo the past, but I need you to understand something. I didn't leave you because of who you were. I left because of who I was. I thought money, power, and status would fill the void. But it didn't. I made a terrible mistake." James's chest tightened. The hurt was still there, lingering like an old wound. He had spent so much time burying the pain, convincing himself that he had moved on, that he didn't need Olivia in his life anymore. But here she was, asking for forgiveness for a second chance. And for the first time in 3 years, James realized that the heartache he'd been carrying wasn't just about Olivia leaving him. It was about him not feeling good enough. Not just for Olivia, but for himself. Ryan, who had been silent during Olivia's confession, suddenly spoke up, his voice tinged with bitterness. "You think you could just come back, Olivia? After everything? After the lies, the manipulation? You think he's the answer? After all that we built?" Olivia's face hardened, her eyes narrowing as she turned to face Ryan. "I'm done with the lies, Ryan. I'm done with everything we built together. I was a fool to believe that this life, this world, was worth all the sacrifices I made. But James, he was never part of this. He was always the one who was real." Ryan scoffed, taking a step forward. "So what now, Olivia? You want to run away from everything? From the business? From Ethan? From all of it? Do you really think you can walk away from this world and just start fresh?" "I don't want this world anymore," Olivia said, her voice firm, but a crack of uncertainty still lingered. "And I don't want you, Ryan. I've seen what this life has done to us. I've seen the damage. I need to fix this. I need to make things right." James could hear the desperation in her voice, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he could believe her. But then he looked into her eyes, and in that fleeting second, he saw something he hadn't seen in years: sincerity. Maybe she had truly changed. Maybe this wasn't just a game to her anymore. But Ryan wasn't done. His expression twisted with anger, and his fists clenched at his sides. "You can't leave, Olivia. You can't just walk away from everything. Ethan won't let you. The things I've done for you, for us, this isn't a story that ends with a happy ending. Not for any of us." James felt a chill run down his spine. He knew Ryan wasn't speaking out of fear. He was speaking out of something darker. The warning was clear. Ethan wouldn't let Olivia go that easily. James's mind raced. There was so much at stake now. Olivia's freedom, Ryan's betrayal, and the dangerous web that Ethan had spun around them. The stakes were higher than ever. And James, despite all the pain, despite all the wounds from the past, knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when the truth was finally within his grasp. James turned to Olivia, his expression hardening. "We need to confront Ethan. If we don't, none of this matters. We can't just run away from the consequences of what he's done." Olivia's face went pale, and her breath caught in her throat. "But James, he's dangerous. He's been involved in things I can't even begin to understand. We're not just up against him. We're up against everything he's built. He has power, connections. We don't stand a chance." James clenched his jaw, determination filling his chest. We're not running anymore, Olivia. I'm not letting him destroy you. Or me. I'll take whatever it takes to bring the truth to light. If I have to bring him down to do it, then I will. Ryan took a step back, disbelief written on his face. You really think you can take him down? You think you can fight him? You're not even in the same league, James. You're nothing compared to him. I might not have money or power, James said, his voice cold with resolve. But I've got something he doesn't, the truth. And that's something money can't buy. That's something he'll never be able to escape. Ryan's face twisted with frustration. You're a fool, James. You don't know what you're dealing with. Ethan isn't just a businessman. He's connected to things you can't even begin to comprehend. James stared him down, unflinching. I don't care what Ethan is. I don't care about his power or his money. I'm going to expose him, Ryan. And if you're smart, you'll stay out of my way. Ryan's eyes darkened, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something dangerous in his expression. But then, as if coming to terms with something, he sighed, almost defeated. You really think you can do this alone? He asked quietly, his voice lacking the fire it had before. You can't. James stood tall, a quiet confidence settling over him. I'm not alone. I have the truth on my side. And if you're ready to stop being part of the problem, maybe we can make this right together. Olivia looked between the two men, a flicker of hope crossing her face. I want to believe you, James. I want to fix everything. But we have to move quickly. James nodded. We're doing this together, Olivia. We're taking Ethan down, once and for all. When facing overwhelming odds, would you choose to stand up for what's right, even if it meant risking everything? Or would you walk away to protect yourself? The moment James stepped into Ethan's office, he knew that there was no turning back. The sleek, modern office was a far cry from the rundown apartment buildings and small businesses he'd grown up around. This was the world that had taken everything from him, the world of power, money, and secrets. Ethan had built this empire with lies, and now James was here to tear it down. Olivia stood beside him, her hand gripping his tightly, her nerves apparent. She had never wanted any of this, but now she was here, ready to face the consequences of her choices. The betrayal, the lies, the wealth, it had all led them to this point. Are you sure about this? Olivia whispered, her voice shaky. Ethan has people everywhere. If we confront him, we could end up. We don't have a choice, James interrupted, his voice low and firm. This is it, Olivia. It's him or us. The door to Ethan's office opened with a soft click, and they were greeted by the sight of the man who had controlled everything for so long. Ethan stood by his desk, his posture impeccable, his expression unreadable. His expensive suit and the air of authority around him made it clear that he wasn't a man who tolerated threats. James, Olivia, Ethan greeted them with a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm surprised to see you two together. I was starting to wonder when you'd figure it out. James's jaw tightened. Cut the games, Ethan. We know everything. Ethan's smile faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Everything? What exactly is it that you think you know, James? James stepped forward, every step fueled by anger and a sense of justice he hadn't felt in years. I know about the money laundering, the illegal deals, the connections you've been hiding. I know what you did to Olivia. I know you've been playing both of us. For the first time, a flicker of genuine concern crossed Ethan's face. You've got it all wrong, James, he said, his voice losing its confident edge. I've built this empire for us, for everyone around me. You just don't understand what it takes to survive in this world. I didn't do any of this for myself. I did it for power, for control. Olivia's face twisted in disbelief. For control? Ethan, you used me. You lied to me. And you didn't just betray me. You betrayed James. You destroyed his life. For what? Money. Ethan's expression hardened. It's not that simple, Olivia. The world doesn't work on love or ideals. It works on survival. You were always too naive to see it. All of you were. James shook his head. You think that's why I'm here? You think I'm some naive fool who doesn't understand? I've lived my whole life fighting for scraps. You had everything, and you still wanted more. You wanted her, and you took her from me. Olivia stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. I was never yours to take, Ethan, and I see now that I was part of a lie, part of a system that was only ever designed to hurt people like James. I'm done. I'm done with everything. Ethan's eyes flashed with something darker now. His voice grew low, dangerous. You think I'm going to let you both walk away? I've built this empire from the ground up. I won't let anyone destroy it. Not you, not him, and certainly not you, Olivia. Before James could react, the door slammed open behind them. The two men who had been watching them earlier stepped into the room, blocking the only exit. James's heart raced. They were ready to fight, to do whatever it took. Let's get this over with, one of the men said coldly, stepping toward James. But before they could make another move, the unmistakable sound of sirens filled the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. Ethan froze. His eyes darted to the window, his panic barely masked. "What the hell is this?" he muttered under his breath. Olivia smiled, a small, victorious smile. "I made a few calls. You didn't think I had nothing left, did you, Ethan?" The police burst into the room moments later, led by none other than Detective Karen Ruiz, the same detective who had been working on a case involving Ethan's shady dealings for months. The officer had been a part of Olivia's plan, one she had set into motion the moment she realized how far Ethan's corruption ran. "You're under arrest, Ethan," Detective Ruiz said, stepping toward him with cuffs in hand, "for conspiracy, money laundering, and multiple counts of fraud." Ethan's face twisted in fury, but there was no escaping the law now. "This is a mistake," he growled. "You can't do this." "I think it's a little late for that," Olivia said, her voice now steady, no longer filled with fear. The officers moved in swiftly, taking Ethan away as his protests faded into the distance. James stood there, breathing heavily, his mind reeling from the events of the last few minutes. He couldn't believe what had just happened, what he had just done. Olivia turned to him, her expression softening. "James, I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to make it right. But I knew I couldn't go on living in this world of lies." James nodded, his gaze hardening with resolve. "You've made the first step, Olivia. You've done the right thing. And maybe we can rebuild." She reached for his hand, her touch gentle but full of meaning. "Do you really think that's possible?" "I don't know," James replied, his voice quiet. "But for the first time in a long time, I believe we have a chance. Would you trust someone who had caused you so much pain if they made the effort to make things right? Or would you walk away, knowing that you might be opening yourself up to more hurt?" The days that followed Ethan's arrest felt like a blur. For James, everything had changed so suddenly. One moment, he was facing down his past, fighting to reclaim everything he'd lost, and the next, Ethan was behind bars, and Olivia stood beside him, her presence no longer one of guilt but of hope. But while the arrest had been the catalyst, it was what happened after that truly mattered. Both James and Olivia were left to pick up the pieces, to rebuild not just their lives but the trust that had been shattered years ago. James had always been the kind of man who believed in hard work, in self-reliance. But after everything that had happened, he realized that some things couldn't be built alone. And trust? Trust was never something you could rebuild in a day. It was a slow process. It took time. But for the first time in years, James was willing to give it the time it needed. As for Olivia, she had spent the better part of her adult life hiding behind her wealth and status, running from the truth and from her past mistakes. But in the wake of everything falling apart, she found a new clarity. She didn't need the power. She didn't need the status. She needed the truth. And the truth was that she had betrayed James and herself in ways that she would never forget. But she wasn't going to let that define her anymore. She was going to make things right, piece by piece, with James, with the world, and most importantly, with herself. It was a long, slow journey. They didn't rush into anything. Instead, they spent time together, talking, reconnecting, rebuilding what had been torn apart. They learned each other's fears, their hopes, and their dreams. James had learned how to forgive, not just Olivia but himself as well. And Olivia, for the first time, stopped running. She faced her mistakes and accepted the consequences, no longer letting guilt control her every decision. Months passed. Slowly, the scars of the past faded, not because they were erased, but because they learned to live with them. Olivia used her resources to help people who had been victims of the same corrupt system that had once consumed her. She worked on building a future, but not one based on money and power. This time, it was about redemption, about creating a life built on sincerity, humility, and truth. James? He had his own path to walk. But with every passing day, he felt more and more like the man he had always wanted to be. Someone who didn't just survive, but thrived. He took the lessons he had learned in the hardest moments of his life and used them to build a new future. One where he wasn't the man who had been left behind. He wasn't the poor man who didn't have enough. He was enough and more. And in the end, when they stood together, looking out over the city, they knew their journey was far from over. But it was a journey they would take side by side. Because despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal, they had found each other again. And this time, they weren't running. They had a future, together. Have you ever been able to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? What would it take for you to move past betrayal and find a way forward? Thank you for watching this story to the end. Your time is so precious to me. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Please drop your comments. Tell us how to serve you better.